What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to share some of my initial thoughts and impressions on Season 3 of Black Ops 6, since I have seen a lot of people asking me what my opinions are on the content, as well as just the updates in general. Keeping in mind, I'm just focusing on the multiplayer side of things today. I may have a separate video talking about my initial impressions returning to Warzone and Verdansk. But without further ado, let's dive right into this, and we're going to start this off talking about the new content that we currently have access to. This is just the stuff that came at launch with the season. And when it comes to the maps, firing range plays excellent, as expected. I knew that map was going to play really well in Black Ops 6, and I really enjoy my playtime on it. For the other core 6v6 map, this is Barrage. The first thing that stood out to me on this map is it's very visually cluttered, and there is a lot going on. It's kind of hard to see what's happening and see where enemies can come from. Part of that just comes down to learning the map and getting some more playtime with it. But at least early on with this map, I find myself really struggling to pick out enemies. I'm straining my eyes quite a bit while playing this map, largely just due to how cluttered it is and how many different colors there are. It was just a lot to take in, but the layout is really nice and actually quite refreshing for Black Ops 6. There's no other map in this game that plays anything like this. It has more of that circular style layout. And it's nice that we've got some really clear separation between the lanes, unlike many of the launch maps in this game. So I really do like the layout of Barrage. It plays great in that sense. It's just the visuals that I'm really struggling with. But as I said, with more playtime, I think that'll get a little bit easier. I'll know exactly where to look when I come around a corner, rather than having to like scan the area and try to find where enemies could potentially be. And then finally for maps, we have Nomad, which is a strike map, so it's not in regular core rotation. And I've got to say, I was very pleasantly surprised with this map. I'm personally not the biggest fan of strike maps and playing face-off, unless I'm just going for some like really quick challenge completion or something. But as far as playing strike maps just for enjoyment, it's just not the style of Call of Duty that I look for. I like a little bit more room to breathe and strategize and push for map control, for instance. Maybe have a good opportunity to flank enemies and not just have that mindless chaos where you hit the respawn button and immediately you're just in the action. And there's really not much room for any strategy to take place. So when I played Nomad for the first time, I had pretty low expectations, knowing it was a strike map. However, this is quite a large strike map. There's actually a bit of room to breathe, and honestly, this is a big enough strike map that I could see this being a regular core map in the game. Now, it still would be quite small for a core map, but I compared to some of the other small core maps in the game, and it's actually bigger than Payback and Babylon. So that was actually quite surprising, so theoretically, this could work as a core map. And I actually really liked how it played and flowed as well, so I was very pleasantly surprised with that. I think it could be a core map, but at the same time, I do think we have enough small core maps in the game, so I'm not necessarily pushing for it, but if they did add it to the core rotation, I don't think I'd be all that disappointed. And speaking of disappointment, while I generally view these new maps very favorably, it's the quantity of maps that I am a little bit disappointed in. I was expecting a bigger update for Season 3, partially based on leaks, also partially based on the delays, which looks like they were just for the Warzone side of things, and then also based on history. Last year with Modern Warfare 3, we got 6 6v6 multiplayer maps with Season 3. This time around, we're only getting 3, and we've already got 2 of them, Firing Range and Barrage, and I like them, but it's kind of disappointing knowing there's only 1 more throughout the rest of this entire season. So that's the maps. Now let's move on to the weapons. And I just recently covered the Grau conversion kit for the SWAT 556, which turns it into full auto. And for those of you guys that saw that video, that gun is insanely powerful. And I was gonna say probably too powerful, but no, definitely too powerful in its current state. Which honestly, at least in some sense, it is refreshing to see this, since it breaks that trend that we've been seeing throughout most of Black Ops 6's life cycle so far. And that is, with any new gun or weapon mod we've been getting, at least since Season 2, they've generally been quite underwhelming, or at best, they've just been like balanced with the rest of the guns, not really a standout. And when that happens, it can be kind of hard to get excited for new content coming to the game when it's not as good as the stuff that's already in the game, or maybe it just kind of fits in with what's already there, but it's not really special in any way. In the case of the Grau, it is special, it does break up the gameplay quite a bit, and it changes how the game plays, finally. So in that sense, I will say it is refreshing, but objectively speaking, it is too powerful. It's definitely going to need to see some adjustments, and I suspect we will be seeing some changes to that in the coming weeks. And I also fully understand the frustration with situations like this, where they launch something really powerful, only to nerf it a few weeks later, oftentimes before a huge portion of the player base gains access to it, unless they spend real money to gain access to it. Next, with the Kilo 141, which I've got the gun guide ready to go, should be tomorrow on the channel. This one's really solid, fun to use, super easy to use as well, but at the end of the day, it's almost identical to the Ames 85 in this game. It has literally the same fire rate and time to kill potential, similar ranges, and basically just slightly different recoil, although it's also a laser beam just like the Ames 85, and different handling stats. So not a bad gun at all, and I really enjoyed leveling it up, but it's really just not all that unique for Black Ops 6 multiplayer. After that, we have the HDR sniper, which isn't really all that great relative to the other snipers in multiplayer. It's not that it's unusable or anything, it just doesn't really stand out. And then finally, with the CR56A Max, I haven't personally unlocked it yet, but I have collected all the stats on it, and I am working on getting a gun guide ready for it. So just my initial impressions based on stats alone, it does appear to be a very powerful gun in this game. Not quite as powerful as the Grau kit for the SWAT 556, but still a very solid gun, and it looks like, at least just based on the stats, it is going to be an upper tier assault rifle. Now, after that, let's get into the movement changes that took place for multiplayer. And this is something I am planning on doing a dedicated video on as well, so I can actually show you before and after in first person as well as third person. But just my initial impressions while playing with these movement changes. The first thing is they nerfed the slide a little bit, but this was a very slight nerf. And while it is definitely noticeable if you're looking for it, I don't think this was overboard by any means, and I'm not opposed to this change at all. And this is coming from somebody that uses slide all the time in the game. I do think it was overkill before the Season 3 update. After the updates, it still feels great. It's probably still your best bet for challenging gunfights aggressively around corners, but they just toned it back a little bit, and I think that's fine. Then they made adjustments to the sprint strafe animations, especially when changing directions. Apparently the timings and the actual movement speeds haven't changed at all, but it does feel a lot snappier and more responsive now, and I really like that. That was actually immediately noticeable to me. And then they also improved our crouch to stand speeds, and that also feels a lot snappier and more responsive, which I think is great, although I do have a bit of a fear of snaking being a thing again, but that is something I will be covering in that movement change video. Now after that, let's talk about matchmaking a little bit. And just like with every major update, it has been very sweaty since this update. Although for the first few matches that I played after the season, including the nuke that you just saw, that's actually my first nuke since the beta of the game. That was actually very easy, and I realized that was due to the fact that my most recent gameplay session was when I was getting my April Fool's gameplay. So I guess I kind of unintentionally reverse boosted because I was just trying to get some funny gameplay for that. And that's likely why I started off with a couple easy matches, but immediately after I got that nuke, it was insanely sweaty for the rest of that stream, and it has been quite sweaty since then as well. And that's really not surprising. This happens with every major update, and I'm almost certain that this is always just due to an influx of players coming back to the game in order to check out the new content in the new season. And the more people you have in matchmaking at any given time, the more the matchmaking system is able to refine its search and find people of a more similar skill level compared to when there's a low player population, which you tend to see right before major updates. So that's why it can often feel like a major whiplash when you play before a season launches, when the player count's at its absolute lowest, versus right after a major update when you get that big influx of players. Additionally, on the topic of matchmaking, console-only crossplay. I'm loving this so far. This is really nice to have. Previously, I would play with crossplay disabled entirely on PlayStation, whereas now I've been playing with the console-only option on, and I've been finding lobbies a lot faster. I've generally been seeing a more consistent connection as well, although I am still seeing inconsistency to the point where some games I've got a 20 or 30 ping, other games I've got a 70 plus ping, and I still think that really shouldn't be happening at all, but it is happening less at least with console only. However, with the introduction of this crossplay option, it did bring back a bug that we experienced in the past, and so this is going to segue into the bugs section or issues section with this season that I've noticed. With those crossplay options, many people have noticed, if you set your crossplay option to console only, for instance, it works when you play your first match, but the moment that match finishes, it reverts that setting back to default, and it seems like you have to reset this setting after every single game, which is obviously frustrating. Like I said, this is a bug we have experienced in the past, and therefore, we are familiar with a workaround for this, so if you are experiencing this and getting frustrated by it, what you have to do to fix this is set your crossplay option the way that you want it, and then immediately turn off your game and restart it. And then when you reboot, it should save that as your default option from then on, and it won't be reverting itself between games. It sucks we have to use a workaround for this. I'm hoping they will fix this once again like they did in the past, but at least there is a workaround in the meantime. After that, unfortunately, on PS5, I have been noticing some performance issues on some maps. It is fine more often than not, but on some maps, I've been getting some pretty serious stutters and FPS drops. And this is something I've seen people reporting since I believe Season 2 Reloaded on PlayStation. And I didn't experience it for myself until the Season 3 update hit, and now I am experiencing it, and it sucks. It feels like I'm playing less than 60 FPS in many cases, like it's really stuttery. And that's obviously quite frustrating because before Season 3, I never really noticed any FPS drops at all. As far as I could tell, it was running at a fairly consistent 120 FPS. Thankfully, the games where this is happening have been few and far between for me so far, so more often than not, things are fine. But when I run into those performance issues, it obviously sucks. Another thing that I found frustrating with the update is it reset my operators. Also, my last 5 class slots, they all got reset as well, so I had to reset those up. And I'm still seeing a lot of reports of attachments not equipping properly for players. Now, this is something I have never experienced, but I suspect this is due to the fact that I never use blueprints in the game, and I think this is primarily an issue tied to blueprints. But it's something that's been happening since the launch of the game, and it seems like with the launch of Season 3, it's happening worse than ever, just based on the number of reports I've been seeing of this. So if you guys are having problems with attachments saving and not actually working on your class setup, I would recommend just using the base version of the gun, which does suck for those of you guys that bought blueprints and want to use them, but for many of them, they seem to be bugged at the moment. And there we go. That's going to wrap it up for the primary things I noticed as my initial impressions for Season 3. Overall, it has been refreshing to get some new content, some new maps to play on, some new good guns to play with as well. And there is still quite a bit more to come. They are going to be releasing like new perks and score streaks and stuff as time goes on throughout the season. So I am looking forward to those things. It does suck that a few new bugs have popped up, and especially those performance issues on PS5. I hope that's something they can get on top of, and I hope it doesn't get any worse, because that obviously sucks. But outside of those issues, things have been playing great for me overall, and I'm definitely liking the game a little bit more after Season 3 compared to before Season 3. However, in saying that, this wasn't like a huge, amazing update that's totally going to turn things around. If you didn't like the game before Season 3, you're probably not going to suddenly like the game after Season 3. But if you've been sticking with it and generally enjoying yourself, at least in my experience, this update is refreshing, and generally, I've been having a positive experience with it for multiplayer. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts and experiences with the season so far, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you guys feeling about Season 3 of Black Ops 6? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.